So I'm back doing more of Hagakure, the Way of the Samurai, and we're still in chapter one. And man, this thing is just packed with so much like wisdom. One of the things I love about this book is that um, is the mix of things that they're contemplating. So in between principles of war and like certain like military theory. So how do you think of your enemy? How do you think of the moment of death, and that kind of stuff? There is things like good manners, like not to yawn in front of people, um, or how to give your opinions, and different things like that. So I'm gonna go through some of just the highlights of more highlights from chapter one. Uh, People think that they can clear up profound matters if they consider them deeply, but they exercise perverse thoughts and come to no good because they do their reflecting with only self-interest at the center. It is difficult for a fool's habits to change to selflessness. In confronting a matter, however, if at first you leave it alone, fix the four vows in your heart, exclude self-interest and make an effort, you will not go far from your mark. The four vows, it's like he's talking about the four vows of the Nabeshima samurai, which I can't remember what they are. I had to go look them up. But it's kind of like um, being foremost in your work, um, utmost service to your master, honoring your parents, and something else. So another thing that I highlighted, because this comes up again, um, Kayuma was completely at one with his master and served him as though his own body were already dead. He was one man in 1,000. So again, in a previous video, we talked about this idea of um, thinking of one's master and serving as though one's body is already dead. And here this metaphor sort of comes back again, that I guess these samurai um, are trying to achieve some state of mind where to them, like, they operate as if their physical body is already dead. um, that's really, again, I mean, can you imagine having to face off somebody who has been training every day, who has been observing um, the highest standards of discipline and obedience, um, and who has spent time coming to the mental arrangement that their body is already dead. That's a very terrifying person to have to deal with, I think, in any circumstance. Um, there's a lot more here about this service of other, right? So another thing I highlighted was men of high position, low position, deep wisdom, and artfulness all feel that they are the ones who are working righteously. But when it comes to the point of throwing away one's life for his Lord, all get weak in the knees. This is rather disgraceful. The fact that a useless person often becomes a matchless warrior at such times is because he has already given up his life and has become one with his Lord. That that is, again, um, you know, this comparison comes back again between men of men of high position and wisdom and artfulness, right? And they think that what it means to be righteous. That they think that simply by being wise and being artful and being, good at what you do or whatever is great, but is what makes you great. But at the time, it always comes at the point of throwing away one's life for his Lord. So it always comes back to this moment of truth. At the moment of truth, when you're faced with some grave mortal challenge, and again, this is at scale, so it might be facing the sword of an assassin, or it could be in a meeting, in an important meeting where your job is on the line or something, and you have to make a decision, or the next thing that you say or do can affect the outcome of your future or whatever, or a company or something like that. Do you defend your position? Do you allow this person to take advantage? Do you start? What do you do? At that moment, many people get weak in the knees, and this is rather disgraceful. Yeah, it's an interesting commentary. Always the pretentious, self-asserting nobles turn their backs on the man just as his eyes are closing in death. Loyalty is said to be important in the pledge between lord and retainer. Though it may seem unattainable, it is right before your eyes. If you once set yourself to it, you will become a superb retainer at that very moment. There's elements of these things there's elements of this that remind me so much of sayings in the Bible, like in the Bible, the Gospels. I'm trying to remember what verse this reminds me of, but I know that there are references in the Bible that talk about, like, I think it's like, I'm thinking about, for instance, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Like, Christ often talks about how the kingdom of heaven is something that is attainable simply through some kind of shift of mind, through some acceptance of something, or through the attaining of some kind of through the moment of prayer or acceptance or whatever it is, that in that moment the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So this is one of the things again I like about this book so far, is the fact that it gives it has these profound reasonings, these very practical considerations about literally waking up and washing your face and fixing your hair every morning, and not yawning in front of people, and not sneezing, and doing all these like sort of like practical, like mannerly things and stuff. And it also talks about like interpersonal relationships and how to deal with like everyday normal things that you wouldn't expect, that you don't expect to, like, we don't normally think about when we think of a samurai warrior, or someone who's just gonna unsheath his sword and just chop you up, and and has that kind of thing. But here in this book, look at what it's talking about. To give a person one's opinion and correct his faults is an important thing. It is compassionate and comes first in matters of service. But the way of doing this is extremely difficult. To discover the good and bad points of a person is an easy thing, and to give an opinion concerning them is easy too. For the most part, people think that they are being kind by saying the things that others find distasteful or difficult to say. But if it is not received well, they think that there is nothing more to be done. This is completely worthless. It is the same as bringing shame to a person by slandering him. It is nothing more than getting it off one's chest. To give a person an opinion, one must first judge well whether that person is of the disposition to receive it or not. One must become close with him and make sure that he continually trusts one's word. Approaching subjects that are dear to him, Seek the best way to speak and to be well understood. Judge the occasion and determine whether it is better by letter or at the time of leave taking. Praise his good points and use every device to encourage him, perhaps by talking about one's own faults without touching on his, but so that they will occur to him. Have him receive this in the way that a man would drink water when his throat is dry, and it will be an opinion that will correct faults. I love the way that he puts this. This is just so poetic. This is extremely difficult. If a person's faults is a habit of some years prior, by and large, it won't be remedied. I have had this experience myself. To be intimate with one's comrades, correcting each other's faults, and being of one mind, to be of use to the master is the great compassion of the retainer. By bringing shame to a person, how could one expect to make him a better man? When I tell you this thing is packed with bars just everywhere. I mean, okay, so let's talk about this, all right? Because this is talking about in again, where the context of this is the samurai is a noble retainer, a servant of some feudal lord in 16th century Japan, right? So this is a book that is giving you a guideline on how to behave, not just how to fight, but how to be, how to live, and how to work, and how to deal with day-to-day situations. So in day-to-day situations, one finds oneself in a position where you have to give your opinion to a friend. I mean, this is directly following a passage about loyalty, about how important it is to be loyal. So clearly, these are not just robotic guys who are without feeling and emotion and thing. They're talking about loyalty, and I think maybe you'll talk about this some more. But to me, loyalty requires a great deal of emotion, of interpersonal connectedness, to be loyal to a person and to receive loyalty from someone else. Um, so so these samurai are highly aware of the importance of interpersonal connections, of having a friend, of trusting someone, of having um, of having reliable, loyal people in your circle, of being a good friend to someone, you know. So in that there comes this typical um, thing of how do you give an opinion to a friend that is not something that is pleasant to talk about. You know, how do you correct a friend's behavior, a friend or someone that you're in service of or something? And I love that Yamamoto has taken time to consider all of the different angles of this, where he's saying um, that it's easy to just kind of point bad things out about people, but unless it's done in an effective way, then it's useless. It's just slander. It's simply just getting something off your chest, and nobody really wants to hear that. If you're just yapping and complaining or pointing out bad things, so 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 immediately there is some limitation on. He's suggesting that there should be a limitation on how much of this you should do at all, because in order for it to be effective, and he goes on to talk about this, that you should to give a person to give a person an opinion, one must first judge well whether the person is of the disposition to receive it or not. One must become close with him and make sure that he continually trusts one's word. So how many people can you do that with? Only a few people, right? So no, so already the filter is applied that when it comes to giving your opinion about people, you really only should be doing it to a few people, because because practically speaking, it's really only a few people in your adult life that you will gain the trust of and be able to gauge over time whether this person is of the disposition to receive this information or not. I mean, you may be able to gauge this in in more short-term circumstances or something. Maybe you're at work, or on a project or on a team with someone, or something like that, and you kind of take some time and go, okay, let me see if this person, what this person's disposition is like, and and that's one, gauging the person's disposition. But then there's also um, becoming close with someone, and ensuring that you have a relationship where this person trusts your word. That's another filter, because even if you're able to gauge someone's disposition, is this someone that trusts you? Is this someone that is close to you like that? If no, then probably they're not gonna really take your opinion on their whatever bad habit that you've observed about them that well, because you don't really know anything about them. So gaining a person's trust is important already, um, in this act of like whether or not you should give your opinion about something, like a bad opinion, um, and then um, approaching subjects that are dear to him, seek the best way to speak and to be well understood. So thinking about what you're going to say before, not just blurting it out, right? And judging the occasion. So determining whether it's better to do this by a letter or by at the point of leave taking, or whenever. Like, when is a good time? I once, I learned something from a former a boss of mine, who he used to do this in practice, and then he told me that this is something that he does while he was doing it, which is he always has like challenging conversations with food. So every time, like he like if he's gonna, like, maybe if he's hiring somebody, and we're gonna talk salary, or we're gonna talk position or something like that, or or maybe you need to he needs to correct somebody about something. He needs to, maybe somebody made a mistake, did something, that he doesn't like, and he needs to kind of pull them up on it, and it's a kind of a conversation or whatever. Or he needs to deliver some bad news. Maybe somebody wanted something from him, but he can't do it, whatever. He would always say, "Oh, let's go grab some food. Let's go grab some lunch, or let's go grab some, let's go, or just have food around, right?" If it's a meeting, we would always do this with clients. We always had food, when we were meeting with clients, always. Um, like, especially in the early stages, like when we're trying to sign a client, or when we are trying to present a concept or something, like present something and we really want them to accept it, or whatever it is, like we want the thing to go well. So the principle is, when you want the conversation to go well, or when it's important that the conversation goes well or whatever, introduce food. Make sure the person is eating something, and people just take things better when they're eating. um, and I noticed that he would do this, and one time he told me that he was like, yeah, I always make sure that every time I have like difficult conversations, I always try to have them with food, because you know. Um, anyway, so it's this consideration about um, what's the right time and place, you know. Guinness is getting antsy. Or you're trying to go out and get those birds. No, you can't go and get them. Sit down. And we soon finish. We're gonna go play soon. Let's go play. All right. Um, praise his good points and use every device to encourage him, perhaps by talking about one's own faults without touching on his, but so that they will occur to him, right? So this is also a tactic that people use in communication, right? And people talk about this in modern, um, like team leadership and um, group dynamics and that kind of thing, or how to give feedback. You always like do the sandwich method of, like, you start with something good about the person, then you give the correction, then you bookend it with something good. Um, but then there's this other thing of where he talks about, perhaps by talking about one's own faults without touching on his. And I've seen people, like, for instance, Chase Hughes talks about this, where, like, like a tactic that people will use in negotiations or conversations or like a sales thing or trying to convince someone of something is that they will they will prime the other person by introducing a principle not directly related to them, but in a way that they would want to think. So like maybe they want the person to be honest or something, you know, and they may talk about themselves. So they'll say, you know, man, I I really pride honesty. Like honesty is something that is so attractive. Like so many people in the world are not honest these days. Um, and it's really really good to be able to talk to somebody like you because I feel like I can be honest, and that's so important to me. Anytime I feel like I can't be honest with somebody, it feels like I'm being boxed in. I'm not, like the relationship is not going well. There's always something different. There's clearly something wrong. It's a huge red flag when someone can't, you know, when I'm not allowed to, when someone can't be honest or whatever it is. So I'm talking about myself, you know, but I want the other person to begin like sort of connecting and going, yeah, that's true, of course, because nobody's gonna go, well, I like to lie myself, you know. They're gonna start to agree with you, and then you introduce the conversation. Then you ask them the question that you want them to be honest about. Um, so stuff like that. um, but I love how he wraps this up. He says, have him receive this in the way that a man would drink water when his throat is dry, and it will be an opinion that will correct faults. So your end goal should be when giving an opinion or you know trying to correct someone's faults or something is to make it so that they want your want what you're selling ultimately. um, like their throat is dry, like they receive it well. They're really glad to hear that thing, um, rather than offended by it or ashamed of it or something like that. So that's really really a really practical and cool way of thinking about it. And it's crazy to think that this is in the 1700s, right? That these warriors, that this warrior class of people are thinking and writing um, about this and practicing this. Um, it says this is extremely difficult. If a person's fault is a habit of some years prior, by and large, it won't be remedied. I have had this experience myself. To be intimate with one's comrades, correcting each other's faults, and being of one mind is to be of use to the master. To be of use to the master is the great compassion of a retainer. By bringing shame to a person, how could one expect him to be a better man? Yeah. Again, I love the self-awareness that this book has. Um, that it accepts that this is a very very difficult thing to do, which is probably why Yamamoto is assigning these filters in the first place. That it's such a difficult thing to do, giving one's opinions and trying to correct someone's flaws or faults or something like that. It's better not to just do it randomly because it won't be effective anyway. Where it's gonna, I mean, it's more likely to embarrass the person or something like that. So first, um, you know, first there's the consideration of relationship building, right? Um, that that one has to have a relationship, a circle, an environment where there's trust, there's loyalty, there's camaraderie, there is service. Um, that's the important thing first is cultivating that environment and one's position in that environment. Um, and then and then the consideration of the other person's disposition, and when is the right time, what what is the right context to do this in, um, and then how to do it as well. That there is uh, um, that there are different techniques that one can apply in the act of doing it. Don't just say, "Oh, hey, you keep doing that thing and I hate it and it looks ugly." No, like talk about yourself, think about and find a way to make it so that the person receives this, wants to receive this information from you, so that there's all these dimensions and these different layers that one thinks about, and it's beautiful to see that, like, okay, these are people who are masters of thinking about something in all of these different layers. Even something as um, seemingly mundane or maybe unassuming as, hey, here's how you give an opinion to a friend or someone that you trust, or someone that should trust you in an effective way. I know we're samurai and we're meant to be chopping each other up, but like, there's this understanding that without loyalty and camaraderie and a, a, a sense of goodwill and love and effective service amongst each other, then all that warfare and all of that thing is it sort of doesn't really have a purpose. Um, it's not connected to anything. So it's really beautiful. I wasn't really expecting to discover this. I mean, I thought I would find things about um, how to judge an enemy and how to when to attack someone and when to run, when to hide, when to, whether you should, I thought I would find more like warfare type things. I expected to find some mental things, but associated more so with warfare. But it's really beautiful to discover that these samurai were um, really emotional people. They were really multidimensional people with lots of depth, and that they that in order to 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 attain the kind of disposition that they had, um, they would have had to have done this in the context of great service, which is built on a foundation of loyalty and love. That there's this ideal that loyalty and service are the highest virtues of man, and that they ultimately involve other people. It's not just about yourself. That there's something about community that is here. Um, I wasn't expecting that that part. So that's really interesting to think about. Um, in a in a in a in a modern sense, you know, am I being of good service to my friends? Do I give my opinions in a fair way, in a tactful way? I think I do with some people, and I think other times perhaps I'm too um, maybe terse, or too. I could be a lot more um, considerate, uh, certainly of the person's disposition, or maybe as well things like time and place. That's probably a lesson I could work on for sure. Um, but also just the fact that, like, um, applying the first filter of context anyway, that one should be cultivating a space and a circle where this relationship exists. So there's really no point in giving your opinion to someone that isn't that doesn't have um, any relationship to you in any kind of way, or rather in a way that will not be effective. And that might include, well, the person just doesn't have any proximity to you, to enough proximity to you to care about your opinion, um, or you may not know enough about the person's disposition to know how they will receive it, or it's just not the time and place, and that's actually quite practical and quite simple. So that's a beautiful thing to reflect on. And with that sigh, with that sigh, that last sigh, I think this is a good place to leave it. I have some things to go do today now anyway. So, Guinea, I'm done. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for listening, watching this. I would love to know your thoughts on this. How am I doing? Um, do you like this book so far? Is this something? Have you gained any other insight than what I've shared? I'd love to know that. Part of why I'm sharing these videos is because it would be nice to I mean, so often I read these books and I retain a lot of this information for myself, but I also really like talking about it and sharing and seeing how other people think about it. So it would be great to get some feedback. So there's some things in the comments. um, and yeah, thank you for watching.